Good morning, everybody. I am Amy Lancaster King with Long Game Solutions, and you're one of the past chairs for MAC. So it's good to see everybody and lots of familiar names coming into the webinar. We've got a great program this morning with General Assembly. Before we introduce the speakers, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors. Without you, we couldn't do what we do. So thank you for that. And then this morning, we've got Rafael Castaneda, Vice President of Workforce Development and Social Impact, and Sarah Hinstorff, Program Manager, Government and Workforce Partnerships with General Assembly. It says Georgia Assembly, but I think that is supposed to be General Assembly. They're going to have a presentation for us. Then we'll have time for Q&A, and then we've got a few housekeeping things we want to share with you before we leave for the day. So with that, I will turn it over to Rafael and Sarah.
All right, great. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. We're very much excited to be with you. We know that you have lots of ways that you can spend your Friday morning. And you also have lots of ways you might choose to spend your Friday morning. And we appreciate you spending it with us. As mentioned, my name is Rafael Castaneda. I'm the Vice President of Workforce Development and Social Impact at General Assembly right here. Not from Georgia Assembly, just to clarify that real quick. We'll get into a little bit of an agenda. We'll talk about who we are, what we've done, how you may have heard of us, and a few other items. But let me also have my colleague introduce herself as well, and then we'll jump right into a PowerPoint deck, which I know you're all excited about. So Sarah, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Definitely love that we call ourselves GA as well, too. So I'm sure that's how we got there. And really happy to be here with you all and to share what we do and hopefully build some more partnerships in the Atlanta area.
Okay. Excellent. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can go ahead and get started. Hopefully you guys are seeing this deck. Okay. Can you confirm that for me, Sarah, that it's coming through all right? Okay, perfect. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, gosh, I hope they have a PowerPoint deck. Good news, we do. And here it is. The opportunity here is to talk a little bit about who we are. I don't know if I'm going to say anything profound. I think most of the really intelligent, impactful stuff is probably going to come when Sarah talks about a project that General Assembly has been doing with a partner in New York and others that we have partnered with across the country. That is really where the traction happens, where, you know, the magic of working in workforce development, which I'm sure all of you do. You know, if you define workforce development, it's pretty much anything, but it's really that intersection of government, institutions of higher learning, you know, work-based communities, and other organizations that are trying to get people into gainful employment. So we're all trying to crack the same nut, and ultimately that's what our mission is here as well. You may have heard of General Assembly. Let me go ahead and continue on. We used to actually have a campus in Georgia, a physical campus, and that campus taught students the traditional boot camp curriculums, whether that was in user experience, data analytics, marketing, coding, you know, cloud-based learning, whatever it might have been. That was something that was pre-pandemic. And obviously, as we all experienced during the pandemic, you know, things changed significantly. And so those on-site experiences were actually pulled back from across the country to only actually have a physical location in New York City now, which is our main flagship campus and really where we you know, do our global work. As you can see on the map here, we do have an international footprint. The organization was established back in 2011. And, you know, in 2011, things were very different. I'm sure you'll all agree with that. And obviously, since that time, you know, General Assembly has gone through an identity, I would say, evolution. And, you know, thinking about all of the students that have been educated in the tech space, you know, it's over 100,000, I think over 120,000 at this point. We're thinking about what is the next phase of this evolution look like post-pandemic as we look to, you know, what does tech training in the world today look like? What I really love about it is that it's industry agnostic. it doesn't necessarily require a specific, like I work for Google type of approach. I've done a lot of work in healthcare and other what I would call industry anchors, in the US economy and beyond. So you have healthcare, tech, trades, manufacturing. There's a variety of different things that these learners learn that are incredibly impactful and relevant to the work of every single type of company. Which we think is really important because those skills, especially as we see the evolution and the advent of artificial intelligence, sometimes without guardrails, the need for people with cybersecurity skills, as an example, is going to be absolutely relevant if you want to protect your data or if you want to create an ecosystem or infrastructure that's related to interfacing with another human being, which is something that we all do, I believe. It's going to be important to have these technical skills on staff, being proactive about creating these ecosystems and environments. So our goal is obviously to bring best-in-class training. How it was done before was a direct-to-consumer approach only, where a student would decide, I'm going to go to GA, and that's where I'm going to learn my education. And that's great. That's wonderful. Some of the challenges, things that we learned is sometimes that can be a little cannibalistic from institutions of higher learning, colleges and universities specifically. If you have a campus right across the street from theirs, a student has to choose which way am I going. Not always the best way to build partnerships. But certainly, in 2011, maybe would have been the right choice. I think we would all agree that today's learners, whether you're coming out of high school, whether you are somebody who's changing careers, maybe considering an apprenticeship or a pre-apprenticeship model, you're somebody who's gone through an American Job Center. Sarah and I oversee that operation at GA as well. We're scaling quickly across the country to help students be able to utilize that type of workforce funding on tuition in partnership with other groups. Or maybe you're a learner who is, I don't really know about this organization. I think I'm going to go down to the local college, community college, university, 4-year school, 2-year school, whatever it may be. And I feel more comfortable taking my education through that entity for a variety of reasons. We are really going through a very strong opportunity with colleges and universities now to partner on the delivery of this content to those demographics of students who would rather go or would prefer to go or choose to go to a college or university and utilize this content to deliver through the college or university to the learner so that they can still also experience the opportunity to learn this education and then move into a gainful employment scenario for themselves. So we're seeing this as a convergence as opposed to a multiple choice for students. We're seeing this as how could we more closely align with partners, specifically colleges and universities. I worked at the University of Cincinnati and Yeshiva in New York for a while, and we did this on the continuing education side and saw a really strong opportunity for non-credit programs that actually led into students continuing their educational journey at that university. So it was a really great way to partner and serve the local communities, especially through those colleges and universities, community colleges in particular, that offer historically this type of education. So we're hearing from the market, we're hearing from other stakeholders that say, this is what we're seeing, this is how we're doing it. I also think we would all agree that post-pandemic, and at some point we're going to stop talking about the pandemic, right? But we're still kind of in that transition phase. But what I've seen, having been in higher ed for over 20 years, is that there is no time that I can think of, and maybe there are folks that can, but I can't think of a time where there's been more opportunity across the spectrum for people that are willing to lean into partnerships and solutions, especially with the higher ed side. It's really been a fascinating couple of years because we're seeing a lot more yeses than nos, where historically people be like, oh no, we only do degrees. Well, students have said, hey, we're looking for something different, and they're voting with their feet. And so for me, it's a great opportunity from my own experience just to simply say, like, this is an exceptional way to really put those stakeholders together in the workforce space to be able to create solutions for learners so they can go through training that's relevant to the workforce, that's relevant to employers, and be able to get them quickly and effectively through this so that they can get into those gainful employment ecosystems, regardless of where they come from. Again, you know, we don't care where the student's background is. We want them to converge into great training that then leads to jobs. It's kind of the whole point of why we're here. So, so let's talk about what do we do, right? That's great, wonderful. Thank you for the philosophy. Appreciate that pontification. But what does that mean? Like, tell me what that means. That's hopefully where you're at as well. So let's talk about actual programming. There has been, I would say, a continual evolution of what I would call like andragogical delivery or adult-based learning delivery. For the longest time, you know, you sat in the classroom and you physically were interfacing with a faculty member, you know, the oracle at the front of the classroom, and they would dictate everything that happened in that classroom from a learning perspective. And we all know that not all students learn that way. Then you had this evolution or oscillation on to the other side where almost everything was 100% live, or excuse me, virtual, asynchronous, completely simulation based, maybe some videos from subject matter experts, et cetera. And now we're starting to see a little bit of that backward oscillation towards people saying, like, what if we could do a little bit of both? You know, could we also have a faculty member or a subject matter expert be available, have some instructor-led experience, but at the same time also do some simulation, some, you know, asynchronous work? We heard you, students. General Assembly is designing programs along those ways. So there's the traditional boot camps, which are your fully immersive experience, you know, like this is somebody who's going to go do this work every single day. Every single day. This is what they do. And they want to be a software engineer. Awesome. We have a solution for you. There has been an addition of what we call short courses, as you can see, kind of going right to left there, from the size difference, you know, the 40 to 60 hours in specific discipline areas. So maybe you're not, you know, that I'm going to do this entire thing. I'm going to, you know, be completely immersed in it, that old webmaster concept. But this is really somebody who's like, I want to learn Java, or I want to learn Python. I want to learn a language, right? Like that's what they're thinking. They're not going to go to a 4-year school for this. There's no need for it. I'm not aware of any degrees in Java or Python. But, you know, maybe they want something that's really like, I need to do this so I can get to the next level. Right. I have my own experience with that. I got a master's degree and then I went and got a Lean Six Sigma green belt. Right. Well, the reason for that, business side of the house operations required it. You didn't learn it in the degree. So you coupled those two things together. So I understand these students' perspective myself because I did that as well. And it worked out, which is, I think, is a good thing. And then we're also thinking about, well, what about people who just like, what is this AI stuff? You know, what is this? You know, what's Tableau? What's this stuff? They're running organizations or massive divisions, and maybe they don't work in this every day. You know, they're not going to sit down and, you know, code. They're not going to sit down and create a, you know, a Tableau, you know, data set for somebody to make decisions on. They're the ones that are really receiving that information. But I think that leaders at this point are really thinking about how do we make decisions with this information? How do we make operations happen in our organization? So we also offer workshops. Some of these workshops are free to people as well, which may be shocking to hear, but we actually offer a free AI for Leaders workshop. I think we just had one recently, and we consistently offer them because, again, everyone has heard of this, but they don't necessarily know what it means. Like, what's prompts? You know, what does that mean? So there's just a way for us to think about delivery of education in a segmentation way, both vertically and horizontally, high-level immersives for the folks that do the job every day, all the way down to folks who don't necessarily need to do that type of level of immersion, but they need to have an experience with what it is. And then horizontally, you know, what level are we looking at? Are we looking at somebody who's going to be doing this full-time, 40 hours plus a week, or maybe they have their own business and that's what they want to do with it? This is the business that their business is. All the way down to those folks that are like, I just need to kick the tires so I know that I at least have a base understanding of what this is. And the best part is that there's an instructor-led component to all of these courses. So you have the ability to learn on your own, but at the same time, you have that subject matter expert that you can rely on that is taking you through a component of face-to-face in a virtual setting. We do in-person and live virtual. So we are able to deploy these programs in physical locations. We're doing that with a couple of schools in Texas and some other places, New York as well, that Sarah will talk about here in a minute. But, we also have that live virtual component because we know that most adult learners cannot commit to 9 to 5 every day on campus. That's the whole point of why online education rose, because the technology was there and that's what the market needed. So we're also thinking about that as well. But if we can infuse both of that into the program architecture, instructor-led subject matter experts, and the ability to do self-study and have some sort of asynchronous experience, that's also a great way for people to learn. So we're thinking about this in what works best for the student mentality. Continuing on, this for me is a really important component for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think most students, or a lot of students, think about learning as a journey, not necessarily like, got my bachelor's degree, I'm done forever. At least I don't think that's the way that it is. Maybe you disagree with me, which is fine. But I think for the most part, learners think of this as like, well, do I continue on in a static environment in life? No, not if your life's anything like mine. It continually changes and moves, right? So what we've done is we've gone out and worked with colleges and universities to do what's called credit for prior learning. So meaning that any student taking one of the courses that we just talked about, whether that was a student before this agreement happened or after this agreement happened, we're able to tell them, hey, listen, if you come through one of these programs, you can actually take this to the next level, right? When you're ready, if you're ready, maybe you'll never be ready, but if and when you are, you'd be able to take this to one of these schools right here. I'm assuming you've heard of most of these schools. Franklin University is in Columbus, Ohio, by the way, just in case you're wondering. And you can transfer what you learned into a degree program at one of these schools. And I'll draw your attention to Franklin University for 1 second. If you know about credit for prior learning or credit articulation pathways, you know that for the last 13 years in a row, the K-12 direct to school, to college, to bachelor's degree pathway, the number of students doing that has decreased for the last 13 years in a row, percentage year over year. Meaning that most students coming out of high school are like, do I really need to go directly into that experience? Maybe there's another alternative route for me to do first. And those decisions are driven by a couple of reasons. Number one, debt. We've all seen it. I don't need to preach about this. The debt load that students had was in the $2 trillion range. Students are like, I'm not going into debt for some unknown outcome 4.5, 5 years later. Not going to happen. Totally understandable. Number two, the lack of specific or specified outcome on the back end once completed was completely unknown. If you go to college, you know that the value of the program is that you have a college degree. It doesn't tell anybody a lot about skills, but it does tell them that you completed something, which is super important, still super relevant in my opinion. And we also know that a college degree is still, even though we saw those decreases in enrollment, we still know, based upon the statistics, that the best vehicle for any learner long-term for social capital, to build social capital and to build long-term financial stability for themselves, the best vehicle for that is a degree. So what GA wants to do is it wants to offer our great program. So somebody is coming out of high school, they're changing careers, they're coming out of the military, they're the spouse of somebody in the military, have skills, will travel type of experience. But we want them to be able to get something that's affordable, it's at the right level. And then number two, if and when they're ever ready, there's a very prescribed pathway for them to get to the next level of their educational journey. So Franklin University, as an example, I'll go back to this one, has given up to 36 credits on a transcript for a graduate from one of our UX, the user experience boot camps. If you just take a second and reflect on that, 36 credits at full load, 12 credits per semester, is 3 full semesters. Meaning that if a student came out of high school, did the UX boot camp, and then transferred to Franklin, they would start, best case scenario, they would start almost as a sophomore as opposed to a freshman in an undergrad degree. Think about that for a second. Like if you went to school, if you could save, I don't know what sort of decisions you were making when you were a freshman. We don't need to talk about that right now. But what I do mean is that if you could like jump over that entire freshman year and start as a sophomore, my question is how much time and how much money would that save you? And is that a more realistic pathway for a learner than starting over? We think that it is, which is why we've created these partners. And you'll see the title there says current partner institutions. We're just getting started. We would love to see 1 to 2 schools in every state in the country. Some of these programs are obviously national brands that have, global footprints, Purdue Global, Western Governors, University of Phoenix, they're all, big online programs. But we also would like partnerships with community colleges, more of that. We would like more partnerships with in-state schools that are focused on their demographics, not a national or global audience. So we want both. And the reason for that is we want learner choice. At the end of the day, it's learner choice. So it doesn't matter to me which school the student goes to after this. I don't care. Maybe they have a better basketball team than the school right next to them. Doesn't really matter to me. What matters is, does that fit for that learner's journey and what they're choosing for them and their career goals? Excellent. GA wants to be able to have that solution in place for them. So we are actively working with schools. We just got connected with a school in North Dakota as of this morning, which I think is awesome, right? So this is happening everywhere. We're doing it in Texas with community colleges there, as I mentioned earlier. We're doing it in New York with CUNY. I live in California, so we have University of California at Irvine that's on the conversation table, and obviously would love to move into Georgia as well and partner with colleges and universities and other stakeholders like yourselves in that area, because who knows Georgians better than you? No one. So that's why we want to work in concert and in collaboration and in partnership, as opposed to direct competition by flunking a campus down in that location, because that's not necessarily the best way to reach learners. So I love this slide. It's going to continue to grow. Obviously, we can share more about that. Let's talk about content for just a second, and then I will be quiet and we can get this over to Sarah for more impactful stuff. And then obviously want to leave, time for questions. Data-driven decision-making. You hear about it all the time, right? Like data-driven decision. Well, let's talk about it for a second. What are we seeing? Like, what are we seeing? You probably look at the news. If you're like everyone, you grab your feed every day and see, gosh, what's going on in the world? And in the tech space, we track the trends, the industry trends, and you see a lot of this, like, oh, this organization laid off 16,000 people. This person laid off 10,000 tech people, et cetera, et cetera. You might think, does that mean that this is no longer a relevant educational pathway for learners? Like, if somebody's in one of these programs, is that a waste of time and money? Unfortunately, the answer is that those two things are completely incongruent. What we're seeing in the space is more of a reaction to overhiring from the past than actual tactical strategic hiring. So we also want to be participatory with our partners about what are the tactical strategic hiring that we're seeing on a go-forward basis. So we use data from places like CyberSeek, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Lightcast, all the same things that you guys use. But we want to get very specific with it because it informs program design and architecture road mapping. Meaning, like, if we don't have the current program and we look at Georgia as an example, or the Atlanta area, what are employers hiring for there? Not California, not Texas, not New York, but Atlanta and the surrounding communities. This is really important. So when you look at, what's going on, leading tech occupations on that right-hand column there, most of these occupations, in fact, all of them are on a growth trajectory. 500,000 jobs in the last year open in this space. Who's filling these? Do we even have enough people to fill these jobs? Like literally physical human beings? Do we have enough to fill these roles? The answer is no. So we have to be thinking about creating those pathways for students coming out of K-12, right? Because that's an evergreen early talent pipeline. We have to think about that. We have to think about people changing jobs. Maybe they did something for a while and now they want to get into a different type of training. We have to think about them. We have to think about people coming out of the military and their spouses, like connect those two folks together always. We have to think about international students, people coming to the US. We have to think about the entire ecosystem of human and how we can get them into these roles in the most effective, transparent, affordable way possible, because we are running out of folks, and we need to be able to get these folks that want to do it into the right job in the most effective way possible. So employers need these roles, they need them filled, and they need them filled yesterday. One of the other challenges with the higher education ecosystem, and why we're seeing a tremendous level of partnership surface with colleges and universities, is that colleges and universities usually can't develop content this fast. It's not at the speed or above the speed of business, which is what employers need. And if you study that industry, you know that that's one of the disconnects. It's like, hey, 4.5 years later in technology might as well be, from the Pleistocene. Like, that's just not, it's not fast enough. I mean, the jobs that we're seeing in AI, they didn't exist 18 months ago. They didn't exist 12 months ago. What are we going to see in the next 12 to 18 months, right? So we want to stay out ahead of this. We want to look at who is hiring, what are they hiring for, and how do we build programs around that? So cybersecurity as a very specific example, and it's also one of our newer programs, which I think is got a really cool architecture to it, is that it is, as AI continues to go up, we also need cybersecurity to go with it. Otherwise, you have access to all human knowledge, with sometimes without guardrails. Well, we need people that can work with employers and organizations to make sure that data remains secure, we're using it the right way, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to tell you all the reasons. I'm sure you have your own opinions. But it's really important that those two things go together, so that one isn't offsetting the other, and that it's a balanced ecosystem. That, yes, we want all the cool stuff. I use ChatGPT all the time. Sarah can attest to this. But I also think that it's really important that we also have those guardrails. And to do those guardrails, you need humans that are cybersecurity experts. And the great news, employers need them too, and they're willing to pay for them. Awesome. I think we're getting somewhere. So how do we think about program architecture? Historically, General Assembly would say, hey, this is our certificate of completion. Awesome. That's great. Love it. I academically completed something. Beautiful. The challenge, though, for most folks is that lacks, not that it inherently does, but for some folks, it might lack a sense of credibility. Okay, well, thank you. Are you an expert in this space, General Assembly? The answer is yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the same as a college diploma or degree, right? So we have thought, what's really important? The infusion of industry recognized credentials, IRCs, right? This is not rocket science. It's pretty standard table stakes at this point across the space. As I mentioned earlier, I did a lot of work in healthcare. That industry is a little bit easier for IRCs because in most cases, you can't actually participate in healthcare without a license or a certification of some kind. And I think we would all agree that you don't want a nurse who doesn't have a license, or a surgical technologist who doesn't have a certification or a license, or somebody in phlebotomy who's going to stab me with a needle that doesn't have a certification. So healthcare and other industries are very, very clear on this pace. Technology has been a little more abstract, right? But that's, again, kind of that gap is closing. And GA has said, hey, our program architecture needs to include IRCs. Why? It adds credibility to the programming. Number two, it gives the student an actual exam that they can go sit for post-training, and complete a certification through a third-party independent credentialing authority. The analogy that I use is you can go to law school anywhere. Go to law school anywhere. Still have to pass that state bar, right? So you can go to law school anywhere in Georgia, still have to pass the state bar if you want to be a lawyer, right? And practice that vocation. So we have incorporated that. It also, from a hiring perspective, probably most importantly, we're concerned about our reputation of quality, absolutely. But most importantly is employers recognize this. They're willing to hire people with these certifications more readily. So we think that this is going to make them more competitive, our graduates in the marketplace, which is really exciting. How does this work? Just as an example, our newest program incorporates actually 3 certifications, A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. I'm not going to get into what that all means. I'm sure you can understand, but CompTIA is a industry-leading cybersecurity third-party credentialing authority. They're very similar to Cisco and others. But most importantly is that you can track somebody with that certification and match it through ONET coding into a job or vocation. Very clear pathway, right? If you do this, you then get this. That's what those roles down there at the bottom are for each one of them. If you go all the way to the right for Security Plus, I mean, somebody that does Security Plus and gets a security and systems administrator on average could make about $100,000 a year. This is not a bad job to have, right? Imagine if you were coming out of high school or transitioning careers and this is what you were looking to get. I might bank a little bit of that and then later on take advantage of my credit transfer pathway, and maybe I have less college debt as we go forward. And maybe, just maybe, if I'm lucky, this is the other piece. If I'm lucky and I'm already employed, maybe my employer already has a tuition assistance policy that would pay for this certification and then help me either offset or pay for my college degree as well, right? People are getting smart. I think it's the right way to go. So we want to incorporate these into the learning experience and ultimately the outcomes that the learners have. I think I've got just a couple more here and then we'll turn it over. Again, the programmatic architecture, we don't need to get into too many details, but we want this to have a well-rounded experience for learners. We want them to have the instructor-led hands-on component. We want them to interface with other people in their community, the social component, the social capital that you build in environments of schooling. Those are some of the most important things that you can actually do in your career, is networking with others. We also want them to be able to, on Saturday morning, be able to go and do their own work if that's what they choose to do. And then ultimately at the end of the day is, what does that outcome look like? How are we leveraging what they're learning into the job? So on the career services side. So we feel that this program architecture is the best model for learners, and we're consistently learning as well. So this will flex, this will change. This will not be the same next year as it is the year 2 years ago. It's going to continue to move forward as the industries change. Machine learning and AI, I talked about this a little bit already, like the data sciences component, really important, but as one grows, you also need to see cybersecurity grow along with it. So if you look at those bottom graphs, or at least at all of those graphs, AI and machine learning growth is like this, kaboom. Do we know what comes next? Probably not. Some people might tell you they know what comes next. We don't know what comes next, so we're being thoughtful about this approach. We do have education in this space, but we also want to make sure that there's that balance on the other side, as I mentioned. AI and machine learning, large language models, et cetera, small language models, whatever that design might be, how are we offsetting that with a cybersecurity view as well? And then this is kind of what we've all been waiting for. I would like to turn this over to Sarah, have her talk about the project with St. Nick's that kind of encapsulates all this together from theory to application. And she can kind of walk you through what this looked like. She interfaces with the students every single day, and then ultimately some of those outcomes. So Sarah, if you could take us through that, would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Shall we start with the video?
My name is Rena Andrews. I am originally from the very small island of Grenada in the Southern Caribbean.
My name is Mark. I'm from Brooklyn. I've lived here my whole life.
Hi, my name is Sonia Morales. I'm from Elkhart, Indiana, and I am a St. Nick's Alliance cohort alumni.
Hi, my name is Chris Arvell, and I'm a senior instructor here of GA. And I have been with the SMA program since its initial cohort. So now we're on cohort number 4.
I'm Larry Rothschild. I'm the Senior Managing Director of the Workforce Development Center at St. Nick's Alliance. At our Workforce Center, we do training, education, and employment. We develop trainings in partnership with the industry and technical training partners who are experts in the field. General Assembly adds that component, the technical training and the expertise.
So far, it's been pretty life-changing, actually. For me personally, I think it's kind of like giving me a second lease at life, because I'm learning technical skills that I thought I would never learn.
I worked a lot with Tableau,
Python.
We're doing SQL.
work with a lot of data.
It started off with me just wanting a job, but as I got into it more, it became a lot more interesting for me.
Yeah, well, we work with both young adults and adults, and there's an interest in the community, but more so there's a lot of opportunities for career growth and career pathways.
The internship, it really got me excited to do my best, because I know that internships can lead to possible future opportunities for me.
I want to find a job with a tech company, obviously, because like tech is a really big growing industry.
I do know one of the things that I want to do is to be able to go back to the Caribbean and to share everything that I've learned from experience and expertise, because I feel like my region needs that.
Currently, I'm working at Brooklyn Workforce One under Grant Associates, which is a big workforce company that expands throughout the United States. We help people get jobs.
We started with a smaller source of funding. We piloted it, and that's helped us to demonstrate success in building the skills and putting them into play. And I think that we've been able to do that in the partnership and show that there's a real need.
My standout memory, oh my Lord, that's a hard question because I have a lot. I have a lot of them.
Big takeaway was the space. Everyone here at GA is working hard and studying, and everyone here is here to learn. In the tech world, learning does not stop. There's always more things we can learn.
I think that this program is more than just about learning a set of skills, right? I believe that one of the things that I try to achieve is so that my students can understand that it's fun to learn and just do new things and the challenges. And you don't have to always know what it is ahead of time. You don't have to be good at it right away, but just the journey and the process of learning can really.
I've made really great friends, and like being able to sit with people and talk about things helps you to get like a different perspective.
That doesn't happen, but here it does, and that's pretty neat.
Even if you do not have it all figured out, you have enough in you to be able to figure it out. If you go to a job and they give you 6 months, or they give you 7 months, or they give you 8 months, like, what you gonna do, girl?
All right, thank you, Rafael. I just like to start with that as a quick intro. The St. Nick's partnership is really one of our cornerstone projects that is a collaboration between state government, a local workforce nonprofit, and GA as the technical expert. And we've been saying a lot that, especially in the wake of the pandemic, as we've pivoted to remote operations, everything we do is in coalition. We're really focused on the fact that we don't want to recreate the wheel. We want to know what we're really good at and partner with folks that are really good at other things. Within this partnership, St. Nick's has a variety of different programs. They have extremely robust wraparound services, helping folks secure housing, transportation, childcare, things like that. Within our partnership, they are the primary identifier of students to come and take the course. Everyone in this course is underemployed, unemployed, and comes to St. Nick's as a workforce center to try to find a pathway to employment. Once they're a student at GA, they still maintain full wraparound services and case management from St. Nick's. So it really is walking hand in hand all the way through. And one of the great things about this program, not only do folks get a learning stipend as they're in class full-time with GA so that they don't have to worry about Metro cards, they don't have to worry about how they're going to feed themselves. We actually set up paid internships at the end of the program. So every student that gets to the end of the data analytics program will be placed with either a St. Nick's employer partner or a GA employer partner for a paid 5-week internship. Really integrating that work-based learning in addition to the curriculum learning, the project-based learning, and the presenting that folks will do with GA. This course is also a customized course in that every unit that we cover within data analytics has an industry-recognized credential attached. So we are focusing on skills you need in the job, how to conduct yourself in the workplace, as well as how to get these really tangible certifications that you can put on your resume and will indicate with third-party verification that you've mastered these skills. So the first of these exams that comes in all of our cohorts is the Excel certification. Now, we all know, even if you don't want to be a data analyst, if you want to be working on a computer, if you want to be working with numbers in any way, be it a budget, be it tracking metrics, be it just coordinating pretty much anything, you need to know Excel. We've had an unbelievable 68% pass rate on the first try of taking the Excel certification after going through this course. Now, we know in the workforce space, that's crazy unlikely. The vast majority of students in this cohort too also do not have a college degree. Every single cohort, there's one right next door to me in the classroom right now, 10 different native languages. The ability of this community to come together and to be able to really learn and work through how to use these tools is indicated by these incredible pass rates. And we are very excited about that and look forward to continue building them. But these are the kind of programs that we really want to work hand in hand with community organizations to make sure we're able to support students, especially students who wouldn't be able to access GA programs on the public market, to make sure that they are able to get through the course and that they're able to get jobs. That's really the focus at the end of all of this. Just one more note, I want to open it up to questions too, but when this cohort is actually offered in person at the GA campus in New York City, but I do want to indicate that one of the other things we are open to doing is teaching on campus in your site. That if you have students that might be interested and we can obtain grant funding and build all of this, yes, we can offer remote online courses, but knowing not everyone has a safe, quiet, reliable place to be taking courses, we're also open to teaching in person anywhere. And we have an amazing network of instructors and jobs throughout the country where we're able to really stand up these programs. So this is just an example of one way we're really able to build these collaborations from the ground up.
Awesome. I think that's our process there, kind of how we work through it with our partnerships. And then I think we're done. And I think we're ready for some questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Rafael and Sarah. This was definitely informative, and I'm excited to see how you've kind of transformed the program to this new delivery model, and think it will make it much more accessible to so many people who need the training. For our attendees, if you have questions, please put those in the chat box or the Q&A box, and I will get to those as quickly as I can. I'm going to kick us off with a question. As technology continues to evolve at such a rapid pace, how do you plan to adapt and adjust the programs? And what are, without giving away the secret sauce, but what are those key trends you are monitoring to ensure programs remain impactful for both learners and employers?
I love this question for a couple of reasons, and obviously Sarah, please jump in as well. My 2 cents is this: is that if anybody ever tells you that they know what's coming next, maybe don't, maybe just have like a flag, right? Because I don't know anybody that has all the answers, and we're not, I would think, we're not immune to that either. Like we don't have every answer. So as I had mentioned during the presentation, we want to look at what does the market say? What does the industry say? What are employers saying? So if you've been around higher education or just education in general in your life, many times there's this prescribed from the learner forward program architecture and design methodology. Well, what we want to do is reverse that. This is not rocket science. You've heard this 1,000 times before, but it's the most effective way to do this, in my opinion, without actually being able to read the future. So if you can read the future, you're good to go. If you can't read the future, you may want to think about a different strategy. So we're thinking, what do employers need? What do the jobs look like today, tomorrow, next year, year after that, 24 months? We really only know that piece of it. The good news is that you can complete one of these programs in a few months. It's not going to take you 4.5 years to get that done, right? That's more of your anchor type of education, like a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree, or a graduate degree, or whatever you might be looking for after that. But for this type of program, start with what the jobs are, what they're going to be in the next 18 to 24 months, and reverse engineer programs to meet the learner where they're coming from. And again, we don't care where they're coming from. You don't have to have anything for the most part outside of like a high school diploma or GED and be 18 to attend one of these programs. It's a pretty low bar from an admissions perspective. We do obviously require certain interest, desire, motivation components and characteristics of our learners, which is why we have an admissions process. But ultimately, I think that if you look at what's coming, you have to be flexible, you have to be dexterous, you have to be thoughtful. And most importantly, I think it's really important to have a level of humility to say, we don't have all the answers, so we're going to have to do research. And that for us is really important because the industries, they move. Healthcare, tech, trades, manufacturing, the electric vehicles, green energy, all the stuff that, you know, administrations talk about what's coming next. These are all things that are jobs that don't necessarily exist today. So how can we design programs that are going to meet the needs of those industries in the coming years? We want to reverse engineer to where we are today. So that's our philosophy. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but we tend to think that it's meeting people where they're at. So when they jump on the conveyor belt of education, it's not, hey, that might have worked in 2011, but what about 2025? That's a problem. So we need to be thinking about 2027 as we design programs going forward and infuse it with technology and also from third-party subject matter experts that do this work every day, which lends credibility, I think, to our programming. So, but my 2 cents. Sarah, what would you add?
The other thing I'd like to add just quickly is that we actually maintain an employer future skills board for each of our primary disciplines. So there's one in software engineering that is filled with hiring managers from the industry that will review our entire software engineering and coding curriculum at least twice a year. We have another board for UX, we have another board for data to make sure that we're actually incorporating employer voice and that the things that we're doing in the curriculum that are intended to be projects that mirror on the job responsibilities are actually accurate to what people will be expected to do on the job so that everything is designed for what's useful and what will actually end up with someone receiving an offer of employment.
Awesome, thank you. We've got a couple of questions in the chat box. I'm going to start first with Faye's question on, do you see a trend of older individuals returning to the workforce, and how do you assist them when they may not be tech savvy, and to assist them with being competitive in the workforce?
Yeah, this is a great question, Faye, and I love that you ask it. Not only are we seeing older individuals, what I would like to say is more experienced individuals in terms of age, return to the workforce. We're actually seeing people stay in the workforce longer, not necessarily retire at a certain time frame. So we're seeing this, and I think it's great, because there's a level of experience that cannot be replaced, and you lose what we would call like institutional knowledge when the folks who have had this experience no longer participate in the workforce for a variety of reasons. So I actually think this is a good thing. Hopefully it's a good thing for the folks doing it as well. One of the characteristics that our program has is what we call pre-work. Pre-work is like a testing of like, where are you? Like, you know, like, do you know how to do this? How do you like, it's no assumptions. We just want to know where you're starting from. Because again, a lot of people are like, I don't know how to use that, or I don't feel comfortable using that, or that's for somebody else, not for me. I've never needed it. Okay, fine. All of that is fine. So we just want to do quick assessments up front through our pre-work component so that we know where everybody is at. And it might be as simple as like, how do I log into something? How do I access this? What about a download of an app, right? Like, how is this all working together? Those types of characteristics and components to a program, I think, are really important, because we want to not assume that everyone is starting from the same place once they show up on day one. But we also have components like, is there a digital divide here? Do you have access to internet? You know, where do you do studying? If it's in front of the TV, that's probably a bad idea. So there's just a component of like, how do we start somebody off correctly? Everything from, you know, what is your current experience and comfort level, all the way through to like, how are you going to be approaching your studies? Because success is going to be, I think, determined by successful completion of the academic components, right? Little difficult to complete that if you don't know how to log into something, right? Or you don't have access to something. So we need a solution for that before we start.
And one of the key differentiators of GA is that all of our courses are live instruction. So we'll have multiple instructors, teachers in there for every single cohort so that someone's not able to just get lost in the program, or when there's a lot of asynchronous materials, you can kind of coast through. Every instructor will offer office hours. There'll be breakout groups to help people figure out those fundamental building blocks so that they're able to stay keeping up with the broader program. And that, like Rafael said, we don't assume everyone has the same starting point. So there's a very individualized process within a community dynamic that comes from these live courses.
Thank you. Another question from Rebecca. What are all the requirements for a person to enroll in one of your programs?
Yeah, another great question. You have to have scored 1,000. No, I'm just kidding. No standardized tests. And I'm a person who's in education, so I kind of feel like it's important to make fun of ourselves sometime with some of these things. But really, it's 18 years of age in high school, diploma or GED for the most part, a willingness, a desire, an interest. We will not guarantee everyone will make it. That would be crazy to think that. But we do believe that with the right level of support and the right level of opportunity, we're going to give everyone a chance to do that. It's amazing if you think about the folks in the video, like one of you mentioned, like I didn't have this opportunity, didn't have this experience. Maybe they didn't have this programming available in their area. To be able to have something like this available that doesn't require you to take standardized tests or to be able to pay tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars for tuition. Like these are all things that we're looking for. So like there's a couple of characteristics that are like non-negotiables, mostly because of state laws and the regulatory landscape that obviously we follow to the T because laws aren't negotiable as far as we know, and don't care to test that theory. So there are some legal aspects of this, but at the same point, everyone who has that interest, desire, and motivation should be able to pursue this if they so choose. How they do in it, we can give them all of the wraparound services and skills to not just get a job, right? To do a job, like this is how you do the job. We also want to build communities of practice for people to be able to get the job. Because I think this also goes back to Faye's question. What if we're not, how do we be competitive in the workforce? Well, a lot of times it's like, have you ever done an interview with a tech trainer or recruiter? If so, what are they looking for? What is that portfolio of work that you can present? How do you discuss what you've learned in that environment? Did you know that you have to be early to, like we don't assume, we just know that students are going to need two skills. Number one, skills to do the job, skills to get the job. We kind of put those two things together. At the end of the day, if the person is armed with those two tools in their toolkit, and they meet a certain couple of easy characteristics of being 18 and have a high school diploma, GED, they have as much opportunity to get through this as anybody else.
Thank you. We've got one last question, and then we've got some other things that we have to address before we let everybody go. So I'm gonna ask this one question, and now there's more questions coming in. So Sarah did put her email in the chat. So if you have more questions after this last question, please feel free to reach out to her. The question is, what does it cost to participate in your program?
So there are a variety of different tuition price points. So as I mentioned, we offer everything from like free workshops all the way up to immersive boot camps, which do cost in the $15,000, $16,000 range, and kind of in between. That's the high watermark. One of the things though that I would underscore for this to also answer maybe Nate and Rosie's question a little bit is, yes, we work with nonprofits. Yes, we want to have our programs be eligible for WIOA, SNAP, TANF. We're making great inroads into workforce funding across the country. Obviously, each of those takes eligibility requirements through the state. And we work with nonprofits to also go after RFP and grant funding to offset tuition costs, or in best case scenario, actually pay for tuition costs. So this is a comprehensive approach. Also, if there's a college or university involved, they are eligible for funding that GA itself is not eligible for as a standalone entity. So working with colleges and universities and having them be the deployer, the actual vehicle of deployment of the content to their communities, can serve in a way to actually expand the funding opportunity available to learners as well. So yes, we work with all sorts of stakeholders across the board, and that's what we define workforce as. It's not just us offering our programs to the public, it's us offering programs from a content perspective, with stakeholders in collaboration and coalition to be able to serve communities everywhere in the country.
Awesome. Well, Rafael and Sarah, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you sharing your program, and there's definitely interest. So I expect you'll get a few emails from today. So before I let everybody go, we've got a couple of housekeeping things that I want to share with you. Max annual survey. If you haven't completed your survey, please do that now. You can do the QR code and do it on your phone. It doesn't take long, just a few minutes. And then the next piece is membership, Max membership. If you aren't a member, guess what? We have another QR code. You can get multiple QR codes today and just go through them, close the windows out after we leave here today. But join Max if you haven't already joined, or this is a great time to renew your membership. You can renew your membership through next year. And then finally, our next Max Minutes will be with public policy leaders, and we'll get a preview of the 2025 legislative session. So look forward to that. And then with that, I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend and a safe holiday and a happy Thanksgiving. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much, everybody.